Switzerland and raised in Germany. Paul, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Acadia. I was born in 1879 in Germany and moved to Germany in 1898. I started painting around 1900.
Tell us about your family.
My father, Hans Wilhelm Klee, was a German music teacher who studied singing, piano, organ, and violin at the Stuttgart Conservatory. That is where I met my late mother, Ida Marie Klee, a Swiss singer. I also have a sister named Mathilde.
Wow, sounds like you had a lot of musical influences. Did you ever want to be a musician?
Actually, I did first consider a career as a musician. I started violin when I was just 7 years old, and by the age of 11, I had received an invitation to play as an extraordinary member of the Bern Music Association. I continued to pursue music as my main passion throughout my earlier years. My parents were always encouraging me to develop my musical skills.
Wow, so when did you realize art was your calling?
I turned to visual arts in the teenage years, partly out of rebellion and partly because I felt that modern music lacked meaning for me. I didn't find the idea of going in for music creatively particularly attractive in view of the decline of the history of musical achievement.
Did this love for art ever affect your grades?
When I started doing art, I felt like I was free to explore radical ideas I could never explore beyond music. And yes, it did affect my schoolwork. I ended up barely passing my exams at the Gymnasium of Bern. I mean, after all, it's rather difficult to achieve the exact minimum, and it involves risks.
Huh. I have heard that you also loved writing as well as art and music. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, I can. I wrote poetry when I was young, and for a little while I had an interest in writing plays. I still continue to write, though, and even after when I decided to be an artist. I wrote in a diary almost every day. In them, there are detailed accounts of my life and experiences, as well as my thoughts on art and literature.
Wow. Can you tell me how doing art as a young boy affects your art now?
As a young boy, I enjoyed drawing delicate landscapes, and I filled all of my school notebooks with comic sketches. Even today, as a grown man, I like to incorporate the whimsical styles of children's art into my pieces. I believe children's art has a sort of untutored simplicity that is almost impossible for trained adult artists to recreate.
Tell me about how any struggles you have had or have had while doing art.
In 1898, when I was studying at the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich, I excelled at drawing, but I had a very difficult time with color. Around the third winter, I finally decided I would just never be able to paint. This was a dark period in my life where I spent a lot of my time in pubs and had affairs with lower-class women. I regret that point in my life, but in a way it helped me to become even more inspired when I began to really create art again.
Many of your pieces now have beautiful color schemes. How did you pull yourself out of your rut?
My trip to Tunisia in 1914. That trip is when I had my biggest artistic breakthrough that I've ever had. The color there was just so beautiful, the light was so beautiful, it overtook me. I remember writing in my journal, color has taken possession of me. No longer do I have to chase after it. I know that it has hold of me forever. Color and I are one. I am a painter.
Very, very inspirational. Tell me more about how you moved into the abstract style and what inspired you to do that.
Well, when I returned home from Tunisia, I painted my first abstract piece in the style of Korean, which is composed of mostly rectangles and circles. The colored rectangles sort of became my building block. I love to create works composed of different colored rectangles that when combined create a sort of harmony of colors. Many people have compared my colored rectangle to a sort of music note.
Oh, I am especially interested in that period of your life. Could you tell me more about it?
Yes, of course. I would say that 1920 was one of my biggest high points of my career. I felt as if the long years of ice had melted away, and all the self-doubting and hardships were gone, and my life was better than ever. This is when I signed a general agency agreement with Gallery Gortz. It was at this time I decided I might like to teach art as well as produce it, so I kept my eye out for a teaching position.
And what happened with that?
Unfortunately, I didn't get the job because many people in the art world spoke out against me. Many people thought my art was not traditional enough, and they didn't let me, but I didn't let that bring me down. I decided not to change my art and keep going the way I liked it.
So this time period of 1814 from 1914, to 1922, tell me more about your time in the war. How did that inspire or affect your art?
Well, as you would know, canvases are not readily available while at war, so I had to improvise with pieces of linen that were used to cover airplane wings. This certainly influenced me to begin to work with different materials, even after I was able to use canvases again. I sort of started putting pieces of plaster, many things I started to mix into my art and make them more, and I also started doing art on all different things, cardboard, wood, even painted black glass that I would scratch with a needle. So that was very fun.
I see. Could you tell our viewers about what you're working on now and who or what has influenced you?
Yes, I actually wrote a sketch along of a painting that I'm working on. I'm going to call it Separation in the Evening. At this point in my career, I'm really just investing in graduations of color. Many of these pieces that I'm doing right now have been inspired by Robert Dulany's painted work, which I have always admired since around like 1912 when he really started to create things. I'm really interested in spatial continuation right now, but I still like to keep the sort of child whimsical things that I really like to go back for that, because after the war was so brutal and the children's artwork is so simplistic. It's nice to look at some simplicity now. I just like to explore new things, and right now with my color graduation, I like to create many works that involve this skill that I'm working on right now.
Interesting. Well, send us a picture of the finished project when you have a chance, and we'll air it on the show.
Of course!
Thank you again for coming on the show.
And thank you for inviting me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Klee.